Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our channel. Dear viewers, there are moments in history when humanity truly believes it's stepping into a golden age, but in reality it's merely treading on thin ice, where a single tremor could bring everything crashing down. And this very moment, right here in 25, might just be one of those fragile turning points. Today, if you open any financial newspaper, turn on the TV, or scroll through social media, you'll see the same story repeated over and over. AI is changing the world. AI is the future of humanity. AI is the new growth engine of the global economy. But the more we look, the more we have to ask ourselves, is this really true, or just a mass illusion, inflated by our fear of being left behind? In the United States, the largest financial and technological hub on Earth, a phenomenon is unfolding like never before. A massive bubble swelling at such speed that even its creators can no longer control it. But what's even more alarming is that this bubble doesn't just reside in the stock market. It's spreading into geopolitics, into national strategy, and into the expectations of billions of people about the future. And at the very center of this whirlwind are three simple words: artificial intelligence. Yet paradoxically, amid the blinding glow of technological promises, lies a dark corner few dare to look into. The majority of American tech giants pouring money into AI aren't actually making any profit from it. Not Google, not Meta, not Tesla, not even OpenAI. They're burning cash, borrowing money, and clinging to the hope that one day AI will come to their rescue. Only one name is truly striking gold: Nvidia, a chip maker, yet hailed worldwide as the backbone of the US economy. A CEO praised as a genius, while behind him, trillions of dollars teeter dangerously close to the edge. And it's from here that the biggest question begins to surface. Is the American economy, the largest in the world, actually running on an illusion called AI? Ladies and gentlemen, join me in the next segment as we take a closer look at what's really happening inside the heart of the US economy, and why, if we remove AI from the growth equation, what might be left of America could be a number dangerously close to zero. Ladies and gentlemen, to understand why the entire United States is trembling in the face of the AI bubble, we must confront a cold, hard truth, a reality that even American policymakers privately acknowledge, but never dare to say out loud. The US economy today is relying on a single engine for growth: investment in AI. From January to June 2025, according to data from Jason Furman, former chief economic advisor under President Obama, a staggering 92% of America's GDP growth came from investments in AI technology, not from consumer spending, not from manufacturing, not from exports or energy, just AI. This means that if you remove AI-related investments from the equation, US GDP doesn't grow by 2% or even 1%, it drops to just 0.1%, a nearly flat number, signaling that the economy is teetering on the edge of recession. Worse still, internal reports from the Federal Reserve indicate that if not for the AI investment boom, the US might have already fallen into recession at the start of 2024. This, ladies and gentlemen, is no longer organic growth. It's growth driven by illusion, by capital injection, by faith in the idea that AI will save the economy. But no matter how strong that faith may be, belief alone can't replace real cash flow. In the stock market, the situation is even more concerning. The 7 biggest companies, often referred to as the Mag 7, now account for 35% of the total value of the S&P 500. Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, Google, Amazon, Meta, and Tesla have become the 7 pillars propping up not just the market, but the entire US economy. But when the weight of an entire system rests on too few supports, collapse becomes a matter of when, not if. And among those 7 names, Nvidia stands out as the most critical pillar. Not because it has the best AI model, not because it owns the most advanced technology, but because it's the only company in the AI ecosystem that's actually making money. Microsoft has poured tens of billions into OpenAI, but the losses keep piling up. Google is constantly expanding its data centers, but costs are rising faster than revenue. Meta is spending billions every quarter running AI models without knowing when or if they'll see a return. And OpenAI itself is losing tens of billions of dollars a year, yet must keep borrowing, keep buying GPUs, and keep burning cash just to survive. All of them, from trillion-dollar giants to the hottest AI startups, are living on one shared belief: that profits will come in the future. that the bigger the model, the greater the value, that whoever buys GPUs faster will win the race. But while everyone else is dreaming about tomorrow, only one company is collecting cash today. And that's the crux of the entire story. Because when the entire economy depends on AI and AI depends on GPUs, the one who controls the GPUs controls the heartbeat of the US economy. And ladies and gentlemen, at the center of this wild gold rush, there's only one seller of the shovels and pails, Nvidia. Right now, let's move into the next segment to understand how a chipmaker has become the last pillar holding up the world's largest economy, and why that reality is more dangerous than it seems. Ladies and gentlemen, in every gold rush, the true winners aren't the ones digging in the mines. They're the ones standing outside selling shovels and pails. And in this digital gold rush called AI, Nvidia is that seller, the only player consistently making money while the rest of the world is caught up chasing treasure. In 2025, Nvidia reached a historic peak that only Apple and Microsoft had ever touched before, a market capitalization of over $4 trillion. CEO Jensen Huang has become a pop culture icon, hailed as a genius, even turned into memes portraying him as carrying the entire US economy on his shoulders. But behind those glittering medals lies a lesser-told story, one of a growth model built on incredibly risky foundations. 61% of Nvidia's revenue comes from just 4 major customers. While their identities aren't officially disclosed, it's an open secret in the tech world. Microsoft, via OpenAI, Google, Meta, Tesla XAI, and Oracle, all companies burning through cash at unprecedented rates. OpenAI is the perfect example. In just one quarter, they posted a $12 billion loss. But even more alarming is their long-term commitment, an estimated $1.4 trillion in the coming years to buy Nvidia GPUs, build data centers, and maintain their AI infrastructure. This is an investment for profit, it's borrowing to survive, a kind of GPU addiction. And when your customers don't have real money, Nvidia has made a quiet yet incredibly dangerous move, reinvesting its profits back into the very companies buying its chips. Nvidia sells GPUs for profit, then uses that profit to fund companies like OpenAI, so those companies can keep buying more Nvidia GPUs. It's a closed financial loop, eerily similar to the structures that existed before the 2008 financial crisis. Revenues rise, but real cash doesn't. Growth looks impressive, but the foundation is hollow. Meanwhile, the media, investors, and social networks keep pushing Nvidia's stock price higher, creating a wave of euphoria reminiscent of the final phase of every bubble in history. People are buying out of FOMO, fear of missing out, not because they see intrinsic value. And when a company's market value is driven more by hope than reality, risks begin to build up quietly, like tiny cracks forming in the base of a massive dam. And ladies and gentlemen, those cracks are now starting to show. Clearly, growing, impossible to hide. Right now, let's move into the next segment and examine the numbers. The bright red warning signs telling us the AI bubble may be approaching the moment everyone fears most, the moment it bursts. Every bubble in history has burst the same way, not because people lost faith, but because eventually the numbers could no longer hide the truth. And the AI bubble, especially the Nvidia bubble, is now beginning to reveal 3 glaring red flags that the financial world can no longer ignore. The first warning sign is right there in Nvidia's accounting books. Accounts receivable, the money owed by customers after buying GPUs. Over the past year, this number has surged at an alarming rate. Tech giants have placed orders worth billions of dollars, but many of them simply don't have the cash to pay right away. Nvidia still records these as revenue, but the actual money hasn't come in. On paper, Nvidia looks richer, but in reality, they're selling to customers drowning in debt, with no clear timeline for repayment. The second warning sign is even more serious. Nvidia's inventory has skyrocketed to over $20 billion, 3 times higher than the same period last year. If GPU demand were truly exploding and impossible to meet, as the headlines claim, inventory should be shrinking, not growing. But the opposite is happening. This leaves only 2 possibilities. Either demand is slowing down, or companies are buying GPUs just to inflate their projects and pump up their valuations. A kind of phantom demand. Both scenarios are dangerous. The third sign, the most obvious and the most frightening, is the unprecedented volatility of Nvidia's stock. In just 54 hours, the company gained $450 billion in market value, only to lose 600 billions immediately after. In 2 days, over $1 trillion vanished from the market, more than the combined GDP of many countries. One Wall Street analyst even exclaimed, "This isn't a market anymore. This is a casino." When all three signs show up at the same time, rising customer debt, ballooning inventory, and stock prices swinging like a hurricane, it's no longer just a warning. It's an alarm that the entire AI ecosystem is built on a structure that's too fragile, too overheated, and far too detached from real value. But ladies and gentlemen, what makes this picture infinitely more complex is that the game is no longer just in the hands of the market. It has moved beyond Wall Street. It has entered the realm of geopolitics, and there is one nation that sees a golden opportunity as the American bubble begins to wobble: China. Right now, let's move into the next segment to see why Beijing is determined to challenge Nvidia and why that decision could reshape the entire global balance of power in technology. If the AI bubble were only a market story, perhaps it wouldn't be quite so terrifying. But the real problem lies here. Once AI became a strategic weapon, the game instantly crossed the boundaries of economics and entered the realm of geopolitics. And it's at this very intersection of technology and power that China has emerged, a force poised to completely reshape the playing field. After the US issued a ban on exporting high-end AI chips to China, Washington believed it had successfully blocked Beijing's path to advancement. But what America didn't anticipate was this. For China, the ban wasn't a fatal blow. It was a declaration of war. Just months after the restrictions were imposed, Beijing announced one of the most aggressive tech strategies in its history. China must achieve AI chip independence at all costs. If they can't buy them, they'll build them. Falling behind even half a step is not an option. Huawei rose as the vanguard, launching the Ascend chip with performance nearing that of the H100, the very chip that underpins Nvidia's dominance. Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, and ByteDance simultaneously launched domestic GPU R&D programs. Military research institutes received major funding to develop AI chips for defense applications, and the central government allocated over $47 billion to semiconductor projects. A clear message that Beijing intends to push Nvidia out of the Chinese market entirely. If China succeeds, the consequences won't stop at Nvidia losing 20-25% of its market. Far more significant is what happens next. The global AI supply chain will split into two separate ecosystems, one led by the US and its allies, and the other by China and countries adopting Chinese technology. When a critical industry fractures in two, the world doesn't just face competition, it enters a prolonged technological Cold War, a battle to determine who will hold power in the AI era. And in such a world, any collapse of Nvidia or the broader US-centric AI ecosystem won't just shake financial markets. It could tip the entire balance of global power. That's what makes the AI bubble uniquely dangerous. It's not just capable of crashing markets, it could bring down the already fragile structure of the world order. And the biggest question right now is this. If the bubble bursts, what happens next? Who gets hurt first? Who rises from the wreckage? And which direction will the world turn? Let's move into the next segment and take a clear look at the scenarios that could shape the future of the global economy if the AI bubble finally pops. When we talk about bubbles, the most terrifying part isn't the pop itself. The real fear lies in what comes after, the chain reactions, the spirals that send entire systems into chaos. And the AI bubble, if it bursts, won't resemble any bubble from the past because it sits at the crossroads of technology, finance, geopolitics, and the collective hopes of humanity. If Nvidia, the biggest pillar, takes a sharp fall, the shockwave won't stop at a single stock. It will ripple through the entire US stock market, where the Mag 7 carries 35% of the S&P 500's value. A drop of just a few dozen percent in Nvidia's valuation could trigger a domino effect, wiping out household wealth, forcing investment funds into a selling frenzy, tightening credit from banks, and collapsing market confidence almost instantly. What America fears most is precisely this kind of psychological shock, the same kind that turned the 1929 and 2008 crises into full-blown catastrophes, far worse than the actual economic damage. Within the AI ecosystem, companies surviving on borrowed capital, like OpenAI, Anthropic, and hundreds of cash-burning startups, would be the first to fall. As capital flees, they won't just stall, they could collapse en masse. A Lehman Brothers of the AI world is entirely possible, unleashing a cross-border shockwave. From Silicon Valley to Europe, from South Korea to Japan, tech giants dependent on US-based AI infrastructure would be forced to lay off workers, cancel unprofitable projects, and overhaul their business models from the ground up. But even in a bleak scenario like this, there are always nations that rise stronger from the wreckage. If the American bubble bursts, China stands to gain the most in reclaiming the AI chip market, because it has spent years preparing under a strategy of technological self-reliance. India, with its massive population and cost advantages, could become a new magnet for capital fleeing the US. And right here in Southeast Asia, countries with political stability and strategic positioning, like Vietnam, may benefit from the shift in the global AI supply chain, especially in data centers, hardware manufacturing, and tech services. Ladies and gentlemen, every bubble carries two faces. On one side, the collapse of inflated expectations. On the other, a chance to rearrange the global order. And what lies ahead may not simply be a financial explosion, but a defining moment that reshapes the balance of power in the age of artificial intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, as we look back on the journey we've just taken together, what emerges is a familiar picture, one that never fails to send a chill down the spine when we confront it. History never repeats itself exactly, but it always rhymes. In 1929, America believed in permanent prosperity. In 2000, the world was intoxicated with the dream that the internet would change everything. In 2008, people thought housing prices could never fall. And today that story returns, under a new name, artificial intelligence. AI is a monumental step forward for humanity. No one denies that. But the danger begins when we start to believe that AI can solve every problem, that its value must rise endlessly, that the money will never run out. In every age of euphoria, people always forget one simple truth. Every bubble is inflated by belief, but they all burst under the weight of reality. The biggest question today isn't whether AI is important. It absolutely is. The real question is, has the global economy placed too much weight on a structure far more fragile than we realize? Nvidia may be extraordinary, but it cannot forever carry the entire US economy on its shoulders. China may surge forward, but it cannot guarantee the world won't fracture even further. And the United States may continue to lead, but it cannot avoid the shockwaves that come when expectations outrun reality. What remains is us, the ones witnessing the great shifts of our world. We must stay clear-eyed enough to tell progress from illusion, to recognize real momentum from fleeting hype. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have your own perspective, thoughts, or analysis on this turbulent topic, I would love to hear them in the comments below. Your insights not only enrich the conversation, but also help us all gain a deeper understanding of the fast-changing landscape of the global economy and technology. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel so you won't miss the most in-depth and honest analyses on the forces shaping our geopolitical and economic future. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.